the top, getting closer to 100%. If it keeps going, we're doing good.
Oh, I see. 0%
At
uploading.
any point,
Yep.
if it stops at any point, we're not doing good. Making a Marketer back here once again, and we are in a square today if you're watching live. So we have two guests today, Jess, and excited to... We've done this a few episodes. Welcome a different side to you. You know, your LinkedIn Jess, of course. You're Making a Marketer Jess, but you also do some instructing, some teaching, some collaborating, some design thinking, what we're going to talk about today at the school. So Jess, super excited to delve a little further into this on this edition of the show.
Definitely. So, do you want to introduce them? Or
yeah, so let me do the grand introduction, but we're going to have some stories too, just from your side as we go throughout this throughout this juncture.
Okay, yes, you have to just mind me. I'm a little slow. My brain's working a little slowly. I'm going through a little preschool bug, as I like to call it right now. So I'm a little slower than normal. But yes, I'm
Yes.
so pumped about today. I love talking about the D School because it's had such an impact, and especially the Design Thinking Bootcamp on my personal and professional journey in corporate America. And we've talked about this on previous episodes, but when I went into this program, I was in sales, and I really believed that I had to present myself in a certain way. Like I had to be very buttoned up and polished, and I couldn't say anything vulnerable to my clients and customers. And I went through the boot camp, and boy, was I like thrown to the streets, literally and figuratively, and it just opened my eyes and gave me a new outlook and connection with my customers. So I'm forever grateful for this experience.
Well, there's no better lead-in than that, Jess. So we are going to introduce two of the folks here from the Stanford D School, Anja and Ariel. Ariel, like the pirate, you said before we started. I'm messing up words all over the place today. Big welcome to having you both on the program, and most importantly, we're really excited to talk through what your boot camps look like, and then also how we relate this to kind of current days. But we would be remiss if we didn't ask you the question we ask everyone when we start the podcast in season 4. And we want to talk about authenticity that you're bringing to the table, and of course cascading to those that you're teaching. So let's start with that. In an age of AI, how are you remaining authentic in your day-to-day? We'd love to hear from both of you on this.
Will I jump in? So I would say one thing that I do regularly, or even more regularly than before these days, and maybe my body felt that I need that, is escaping to places where the algorithms can't go, which translates to me sitting in a 5-hour opera last week, and then sitting in a very long contemporary dance performance yesterday. And of course, a little bit is just my love for art, but I think in general, it's those moments where you are really connected to other humans, both in the audience, but of course also the performance, and all the emotions it triggers, and all the kind of like sensory stimulation that you get, and the thinking that happens after, that you need to process in your own head. Of course, I could kind of like, put the link to the performance in chat, and then kind of like dictate my experience and ask Claude or Gemini to do something with it. But the real power actually happens in that moment. And I think I'm trying to kind of like find more of those moments and just quieting my analytical brain and tapping more into the emotional and the sensory. And then hopefully bringing more of that to the table at work next morning. So this would be the short answer.
I love that. This is just an observation. Anja, I love that you're bringing up the opera because I feel like there's now a surge in maybe like looking more into the opera after the Olympics and the closing ceremony where it was a whole story, beautifully told story about Italian art and music and culture, and the opera was the star.
Yeah.
I can go. How do I remain authentic in this age of AI? I guess I have kind of two answers. One that's somewhat akin to Anya's of like a ritual or practice that I do daily is I have a very big dog who requires a lot of exercise, and I happen to live on a hill where there is a trail nearby. So I walk and I let my mind wander, and it just goes to interesting places that it can only go on its own. With the aid of my feet, my body, and a nice path. So that's sort of like the practice that I do daily. The thing that I do that I think is more sort of like directly anti-AI, there's a great little segment from an This American Life episode where Ira Glass talks about taste and craft and how when you're starting out creative work, like your taste is much higher than your craft. And the reason you got into creative work perhaps is because you have good taste, because you like creative things, whether that's a work of art or a piece of writing or cooking, any type of creative venture. What that means though is that in order for your skill to catch up with your taste, you're going to have to do a lot of practice. So the thing that I like to do is just like doodle, which I'm not very good at, and I write a little bit, and I also like kind of read a ton, and it's just a way for me to like engage with something that feels a little bit more core. I might not end up being spectacular at it, but in an age where like the computer can do so many of those things for me, I try to force myself to develop some craftsmanship myself.
I like the aspect, Ariel, that you're hitting on there and talking about kind of your craft catching up to the creative aspect. I'll relate to that as we move forward throughout our journey today, especially like on things I've said yes to. Like sometimes I'm like, yeah, I got that, but then I'm like, oh no, do I have that? But I think that's a big part of design thinking. And let's talk about that in now both of your leadership styles. So now we go into design thinking. We are in the boot camps. You're leading other leaders. But who were you before design thinking, or before you formally are putting it out there in this format? Tell us how this has come about in your careers and what got you to the D School to offer these types of sessions.
I'll go first. I have kind of like the most traditional story in the world for getting a job at the D School, which was I was an intern, and then I got offered a learning experience designer job, and then kind of stuck around for a number of years and had learned how to complete different parts of what we do at the D School and kind of end up where I am now. I like to joke that part of the reason why I got the job to begin with is that when these workshops would end, I would tell people like, you can go home, don't worry, I'll do the cleaning, I'll take care of it. And they're like, oh, we should keep this guy around because, he does the cleaning and so we don't have to. But hopefully there were a few other elements that they connected with as well. Prior to coming to Stanford, I was a teacher. I did Teach for America, taught middle school special ed math in Greater New Orleans, and then was a school founder in the south side of Chicago. And although working with executives in innovation and creativity is quite different from teaching and learning in a K-12 context, I learned a lot about how to just construct a learning experience in order to help people draw meaning out of it. And actually, middle schoolers are a lot harder to herd. They're much less compliant than adults. So I picked up a lot of skills in terms of how to manage crowds and kind of communicate effectively in short segments in my previous career.
Yeah, so I think this also tells, I'll share my background in a second, but this says a lot about how we teach at the D School. We always have teaching team with very diverse backgrounds and making sure that we bring diverse perspectives, but also very different expertise to the table. And of course, in our bootcamp program, we have a very large teaching team because we have a very strict teacher to participant ratio, which is 1:5 usually. So we really make sure that we get the best of the experts in the field and bring them in to teach with us. So I came to the D School as a researcher and professor, but I would say mostly educator by heart. And one thing that really changed for me when, so I came from Europe, from a very traditional university, and I love research and I love to look for everything we do in our programs and kind of like find the research and scientific evidence for our pedagogy and so on. But the thing is that nobody changes their behavior because of a PowerPoint, right? Because the forgetting curve is very steep, especially in adult education or executive education, which means that when I came to Stanford and met kind of like my professional family at the D School, I really stopped thinking of our job as professors as only somebody who conveys the knowledge, but really thinking about like, how can we design learning experiences that create something and trigger something in people that stays with them? And I think this is kind of like to this day still what we do. And I think especially in executive education format, which is very short and very condensed, we need to create almost like behavior pressure cooker. Like we need to create those experiences in very short amount of time with people who have never met each other, and create ways in which they get new experiences, new behaviors, new mindsets, like things that they can then pull out of their leadership toolbox when they get back to work. So I would say we're all educators by heart, I think, in our team, and really thinking very thoughtfully how we design every single program.
Yeah, and if I may connect just 2 points, like one of the things that I did when I was back teaching middle school special ed math is I realized that the way that I was taught and was likely to teach the material just didn't work. And so rather than trying to repeat something that failed, I switched up my strategy, and I ended up creating a pedagogy that was based on games. And like gamification has a lot of implications for how we design modern applications and technologies, because it's very viral, it's very infectious, right? There are levels, you want to get to the next level, there's a motivation built into it. But the games that I taught with were like more conceptual. And what you end up figuring out is if you impart an idea or a lesson through a game, then you can like put words to it later. And then the meaning, the value of it, what you're actually supposed to draw out is much stickier. So that kind of experiential pedagogy where you teach people a thing, not by telling them what it is, i.e. a PowerPoint, but through an experience that actually hits on these like deeper conceptual roots, is a core part of kind of my experience and what I've really enjoyed figuring out how to do with different audiences at the D School.
So something I'm taking away already for this, Jess, is one of the things that I'm going to definitely start using is talking about what do you retain from a PowerPoint? And that's like a key thing, Anja. Like I kind of hit and wrote that down. I was like, we're coming back, we're short form clipping this, because it is so much about the curriculum, the conversations, the ability that we have, Jess, to get leaders to kind of, re-spark some creativity. So I thought that was really interesting and leads into a lot of why it's so important to have the conversations we have on this show.
And then Ariel, speaking about the gamification piece, makes me think, Andy, I think we just got like a marketing 101 branding lesson from Anja and Ariel.
Yes, I agree. Kind of how you combine some of those elements and bring it to the table, even with some leaders, which I think is important, because let's get into kind of the main course here. Now, as both of you are welcoming leaders in, and they're in the program, obviously all of us here, we work with different executives, their day-to-day is budgets. Are we making revenue? Are we retaining our head count? Are we doing all these things? One of the last things on their plate sometimes is, are we design thinking? Are we thinking creatively? So what kind of like armor are they coming in with? How are you kind of getting them to find that again? And what is kind of the result that comes from this? Like, is it something where you have to almost like bring that armor down in this world of AI and kind of like fast-paced initiatives?
Yeah, I have a story I can share. I don't know, Ariel, if you want to jump in first. I can go? It's really interesting. You're talking about the pressure of like, quarterly results and all the things they need to deliver daily and quarterly and yearly. But I think there's another armor that we see a lot when participants walk into the program, and it's the armor of being an expert, or the pride and the pressure of being the expert. And I think when you're in a boardroom, the smartest person is usually the one that has the answer. So having that armor of being an expert works really well. But when you come to a design studio or innovation studio or the D school, it changes a little bit who the smartest person in the room is, right? It might be the person who has the most sensitivity to spot the problems that are worth solving, or is the one who is asking the right questions, or is the one that triggers thinking in other people on the team. So this shifts a lot, but you can't tell people, oh, from now on, you just entered the D school, you're not an expert anymore. Clearly they are, and they should be. But we do this activity, for example, I'll share one without disclosing too much what happens on day one, but we do this introduction through 1 minute life story. And they have 1 minute, each person gets a chance to share their life story. And after the minute, they feel like, okay, we're done, because in this minute, they usually share all the credentials and all the achievements that they're proud of. And then comes round 2. And surprise, surprise, you have 1 minute again, but you can't use any of the material you used in the first round. And then comes the third round. And this is when what changes is they go from like expert to being at awe about other people who are on their team. And it's like, oh my God, this person is really interesting. They have this interesting background or life experience that they have been through, or cultural background they're coming from. And I think for innovation, this is one of the most important elements to bring these perspectives together. And this is usually when the armor drops. They still know they're experts, will need their expertise a lot throughout the project, throughout the week, but they also start really appreciating other people in a team and knowing that maybe something that they say might not be the smartest thing, but it will spark a really smart idea in somebody else's mind. So we try to kind of like remove that armor right away, and they can put it in the closet, and then we bring it out again on day 3 or day 4 if they need it.
I'll try to answer that same question, and I'll answer it somewhat literally and echo some of the points that Anja made, which is I think the armor that the leaders come in with is their leadership, where they're expected to be the person in charge, be the person who's driving the action, driving the change. And what we have them do as they walk in through the door is engage in improv exercises through our colleagues from the theater department who are exceptional improv facilitators. And in improv, it's not about being the star of the show. It's not a monologue that you're delivering. It's about this idea of yes and, right? It's about setting up your partner to be successful as much as it is about being successful yourself. And so through that, I think they start to realize that they need to be a contributor in a particular way. Design thinking can benefit at certain times from a flat hierarchy. There are times where you might have more of a traditional, kind of pyramid hierarchy, but there are times where the flatness, especially when you're sharing ideas, when you're trying to bring diverse perspectives to a collaborative project, where you want things to be flat. And so I think that's kind of the thing that they need to drop. And it through that experiential mechanism, right, through the improv, it actually starts to shift for most people pretty well. I'll share just one other thing, which is there's a different program that I used to run called Discover Design Thinking that I ran with my colleague Louis Montoya. He's now the core instructor for Design One. It's our class for the design major at Stanford. And we did a workshop together, and the first thing that we had people do was an escape room. We bought this kind of portable escape room kit. They had to set it up, and they had to kind of, break this puzzle, so to speak. And we would just observe and watch which teams worked together well and, thereby usually completed the task quicker, and which struggled. And you could see the same teams that struggled in that early task were the same ones that struggled later on when we gave them a design challenge. And so these micro performance tasks really reveal a lot. And it all has to do with how people kind of collaborate and work together, right? The ones who are I have all the answers in a puzzle environment tend not to do as well as the ones who are listening, responding, and contributing.
And I think this also, just to wrap it up, I think this also brings us to what is our program about? Is it design thinking as a process, and people feel oh, I can learn about this process by reading about it. But in reality, anyone who has been in our program, Jess included, it's so much more. It's the mindsets that you have. It's how you show up. It's how you act and interact with others. So we work on that so much more than just kind of conveying the steps. We're even moving away from steps and making things more designed or explained in a way where teams can self-navigate, but we can speak about that later.
I'm really curious, just based on like this idea of like being the expert and that is the armor. Have you seen things change or maybe mindsets shift based on AI and how you can look up a lot of things? I'm not saying it's all accurate, but I feel like maybe AI kind of takes away this idea of one person being an expert.
I feel like these days there's a lot of like being written and said around how intelligence is now widely available. I don't think it has really penetrated each individual's perspective of who I am as an expert. I think we'll probably see more of that shift. The conversation is definitely there, and we're all aware of that. And then I think the conversation is also around, of course, I can access a lot of information and I can create a lot of things with AI, but then what is that human part, right? And we can talk about that later, and how in the program we really get people to the point where they have agency and they want to solve a certain problem that they discovered. And this is something that you need in order to trigger AI to help you with that process. So yeah, if we'll have time, we can definitely talk about this.
So we talked about authentic, how we stay authentic in the age of AI. So this morning on my walk with my dog, I was thinking about the 4 spheres of information, data, knowledge, and wisdom, which I guess gets smaller, right? Information, kind of all the stuff that's out there, data being a subset of information, which is of a particular type, knowledge being like, what do you know about that data? And then wisdom is like actually having actionable insight, right? Or really applying a bit of information about these other spheres. And I'm not convinced that like AI is wise. Maybe it'll get there, and that's a blind spot for me. It certainly feels like knowledge, it certainly feels like data, and it certainly feels like information, and that stuff can be useful. But if you're looking for a clear, actionable insight about human behavior that's going to lead you to make a sale in the previous iteration of Jess, or like create an innovative product feature, or a new company vertical, like that's going to require something that's actually quite insightful, as well as informed by knowledge and data and these other things. And so I feel like that is, if not the domain of the expert, it's the domain of the person who has the kind of like purpose and meaning and clarity of vision to be able to see through all of this this fuzziness. And the other thing, kind of the dark side of AI, is that it also has a lot of slop, right? It's like sort of disguised wisdom that when you peel it back, it may have hallucinated, or it may just be missing a lot of key aspects about whatever that data set is, and not providing real insight. So I feel like I'm going on and on here, but it's an interesting space where like you can sort of get you can make some progress really quickly, but will it get you to that last 20%, which will truly differentiate something from being banal to being something incredible?
Now, let's get into some of my marketing fears here, which is like a whole other like episode in itself, and like AI replacement and all that good stuff. But let's talk about executives' fears that come into the program. So I find this kind of interesting. We've kind of, Jess, you and I have dabbled on this from some of your experiences in the D school before. We see executives, we see these C-suite leaders as it's really confident people all the time within their companies, that even through chaos, they're the ones who have to have the handle on everything during the chaos. However, I'm sure when they come into these programs, what are some of the common themes, the fears? What are they bringing to the table that maybe we're not getting on a day-to-day basis?
Oh my, I could go on for 2 hours now, so I'll be very short. But I think for us, the core of our pedagogy and why we're doing this is actually to deal with fear. And fear of failure is the biggest enemy of innovation, and you can't just cure it by telling people not to have that fear. But then if you kind of like, if you break down fear of failure, it's a bunch of different things, like let's say like 4 things. Fear of the unknown, because you're always in innovation projects, you're entering a territory that is new or at least novel to you. Fear of being judged, Like, what will other people think when I contribute, when I speak up, when I set a direction for the project? Fear of first step, like getting started, and then fear of losing control, which happens when you work collaborative in innovation teams, right? When you're not working alone and you're not the one who says how things will be and think this is how things happen. So all of this kind of like fear stuff led us to take a lot of inspiration from Albert Bandura's research on self-efficacy and his approach to curing fears. So we'll not go into how to how to cure phobia of snakes here, but this was the inspiration. And what he came up with is a guided mastery approach where he was helping people overcome massive phobias in just an hour or 2 hours, step by step, with somebody alongside you that gives you small wins. And we're using a lot of that in our pedagogy. So really allowing our participants to go through the discomfort of unknown and uncertain, especially working in a new team on a project which is not their own topic and expertise, and having somebody alongside them, like a coach, who is really guiding them step by step, but also providing real-time feedback. Because we know that for behavior change, it's not enough to tell them at the end of the program, hey, next time you could try this and that. We actually give them real-time feedback so they can course correct in the moment. So think of our bootcamp as like, if we take analogy from sports, it's training, practice time. And in sports, you're practicing 90% of the time, and then performing 10%, in the Olympics and World Cup and so on. But in executive role, you are on most of the time. So the bootcamp is a place to come, be in a very safe environment. You are kind of like, it's designed to put you into new experiences, practice new mindsets, new behaviors, new ways of interacting. But then you're also getting course correction, so you can try and iterate new versions of being you as a leader. So I think it all starts with the fear, but I think we have figured out how to address some of that through our pedagogy.
So let's take us through now kind of what it means to have that exact moment and the understanding, the shift when it comes to leadership. Is there an aha moment that you've started to see with them? Is maybe they start to fight through some of this? Will this work? Is this the right movement? Should I speak up? Like, what breaks through? And for someone that's an executive, we hear about clear outcomes a lot. I'm sure this comes up in your discussions. Like, what is the outcome that once they get that aha moment, they're able to translate into their day-to-day?
I think so before I got this role as leading the Design Thinking Bootcamp, I was in a group that was right next to the people who led the Design Thinking Bootcamp, which my predecessors were Jeremy Utley, Perry Klaben, Catherine Velchik. And I would overhear conversations with them. And like the number one thing that would come out was that like, you need to listen to your customers. And I think still on a really strong level, it's this idea of listening to your customers. And I think, wherever you are in a consumer business, you want to deliver value, right? You want to deliver value for the people that you are serving. And what happens over time as companies get mature is there are so many layers that get built up, so many processes that, create a type of separation. And when people get the opportunity to really return, listen, and realize I can deliver value in new ways, in innovative ways that are revolutionary or subtle and incremental, something really clicks for them because they realign again with the purpose for why they're doing their job. And then they also have this creative vehicle where they can now start to, okay, I've stumbled on a new customer need. I need to now iterate my way through that to try to deliver on that need through these various ways, through these various prototypes. And so I think it's sort of like this perennial aspect of what businesses need to do, but it's so simple and it's actually quite profound, and it can really help unlock new pathways for success and innovation.
Yeah, for sure. I would say they come in obsessed with how to solve the problems, and then they leave obsessed with how to better understand the problems and even discover what the problems really are. And again, here talking about AI can be great support in identifying and scraping the web for some of the loud voices, what are people talking about in forums and groups and so on, depending on the project clearly. Also some silent signals that maybe you wouldn't notice and it's not published in trends in your industry report yet. But at the end, talking to users, this is the aha moment. They go out and they kind of like see the problem from a completely different angle. Let's say in one of the last programs with Ariel, we gave them a challenge to reimagine professional communication. And we intentionally give them a very broad challenge. And then they go out in teams and every team come back with a completely different, very personal narrative and very emotional narrative. And you would think, oh, but then you don't want to just solve for one person. But the thing is, when they hear that one story, for example, there was this one lady, Vicky, and she worked for a global company, like her work colleagues are around the clock pretty much in time zones. And she said that every time she sees red notification popping up on her phone or her screen, she gets this like surge of anxiety before she even looks what it is. She's like, I'm terrified to even know what it will be. And she feels that they're already expecting something from her. So hearing that narrative, the team is still solving the problem around professional communication, but they have this very powerful cause. They want to solve for Vicky and people like her. And I think this is kind of like the aha. It's not just a brief we gave them. It's not just the quantitative data of how many people struggle with professional communication, but it's these personal narratives that shift how they think and how much effort and energy they put in the project.
Yes, from my personal experience, 100% agree with what you both are saying. And what I found too is it's like the most human thing we could do as leaders. And it really is so freeing when you start to focus on the people in that way and like being there for others. It's the most freeing thing. And that really helped me let go and, you know, get rid of that fear that I had coming in.
We will have to have a discussion one day, Jess. This is for a future episode. So one of the things, this is my radio background, and completely different, but somewhat the same. And it was when I interned for a radio host, as I was becoming a radio host, my original career, is that the thing you said, Andy, this is 22-year-old Andy, who are you talking to? And I would say, well, I'm talking to a group of audience. It's this blah, blah, blah personas. Like, I'm talking to a sponsor. Like, just like I couldn't figure out the question. He's like, no, you're talking to a singular person. He said, you're talking to the customer. And that's individual, and their experience that they have one-to-one for you is unique each time. And how are you portraying a one-to-one conversation in a way that can land one way for them, hopefully another way for someone else, but it just like it lands one-to-one when you're having that conversation on radio. So I've always gone back to that throughout all of marketing. I think that's just the ultimate human skill that I take away listening to this, you know, AI, human, all of that good stuff. So let's like talk about that too, like human skills. And, you know, if you're looking for like a non-negotiable, what is something that they have to have as they go back into this executive room to be leaders? And when you think of design thinking, how are you training some of that humanity to bring it back? We talk about talking to the customer. That's kind of where Jess and I's brain always go. But sometimes it might be, what are they doing internal? So like, how are they handling their folks on their team? And how are they being human in a way that could hit one person, but could also hit 500 people within their organization?
I would say that the core human skill that comes out of this, which becomes like even more necessary within this context of living in an age where we have such incredible technology at our fingerprints, is clarity. Sometimes that's clarity about what we need to build. Sometimes it's clarity about what doesn't work. You know, the sort of Thomas says, and I haven't failed. I've found 1,000 ways that don't work. But even if you do interface with AI very much in your day-to-day professional work, and hey, like, which knowledge worker does it nowadays? Like, having that strong, clear sense of like, this is the direction that you need to go in, like, is becoming more and more urgent. In that sense, like, we're all creative directors of these different agents and these different LLMs. And I think ultimately we are human, and part of the way humans tend to work really well is in relationship with other humans. And so human-centered design really offers you direct avenues to do that. And then within that messy landscape, right, steps of synthesizing and understanding that information, moving towards a clear problem, a clear point of view, can then really lead you on to product innovation that comes out and sort of stands apart from what might be more common or what might be made without much consideration. So that's, I think, kind of one of the core human skills that you do get out of this through multiple rounds of iteration and movement.
I'll maybe talk a little bit about there's so much conversation and research actually around human interaction with AI tools. And then there's this one direction, which is AI as a tool versus AI as a teammate. There's wonderful research actually this morning. One of my students ran a really cool experiment on that, and how do we behave differently when we just perceive AI tool or AI as a tool versus as a teammate. But I think in general, AI can be a brilliant teammate. But one thing that it cannot do, or maybe I should say cannot do yet, is care, right? AI doesn't wake up at 3 a.m. thinking we need to solve this problem for this parent with this and this issue. But we need to be the ones to have that agency. So as Ariel said, definitely clarity. What problem should we be solving? But then also agency to kind of like kick off AI tools in motion to help us with that. And I think that transition from us waiting for instructions to owning the mission and then actually propelling the whole thing in motion, I think is what will remain human until AI activates itself and has clarity on where to activate itself.
I'm really curious, just quickly, because you mentioned like AI as a teammate, and I do like that frame. What are things that you are doing to make it a better teammate?
I can't tell you about a better teammate yet, but the research today, the experiment we ran today was understanding it was with students, so how do students behave differently when the instruction is that they need to do a task with AI as a tool, versus in the other one they were told, this is your teammate, it's a trusted sparring partner, it will help you kind of like bounce off ideas and so on. So we'll be measuring things around how are they prompting, how much context are they giving, how many interactions are they having, and also the creative output, because this was the purpose of the study. We'll be sharing more when it comes out.
I'd be excited to see that, because I even think on the podcast right now, I will say that we admittedly use 3 AI tools to produce this podcast. 1, what we're using right now to record it. 2, we use a Opus clip that will clip the videos and kind of caption them for us and make it quicker. And then 3, we produce a newsletter which runs a transcript from this show into ChatGPT, and it formulates a newsletter for me that I then go and take what ChatGPT gave me, but I write it in a more fashionable manner. So, like, it's just to say there's a very human way to do this. Like, it takes a lot of like the SEO and the things that we're looking for on this, and it like gets it to a place, and then we humanize it. But, you know, like, I think the big takeaway I have is when we're bringing leaders in to the D school, how are they taking that and framing it up? Because if what Anya's saying, if AI is my coworker, that's going to scare me. If AI is part of my day-to-day creative tasks, that excites me because I can get better at what I do in my day-to-day. So big takeaway for me there. But Anja, Ariel, we are closing in on time. Any last thoughts? Because I know we could go on for another couple hours on this topic, but super insightful thoughts, just ways to connect with the program. What could be just next steps for someone that would be interested today?
Well, I would say one final thought. I was watching a keynote by a speaker who spoke at Google. I'm sorry, I've forgotten his name, but maybe we can put it in the AI newsletter that comes out. But he put up this graph of like going from a toaster, a simple toaster on one side, versus the like Robot in Her, the science fiction movie where Scarlett Johansson plays a kind of dating voice for Joaquin Phoenix. and how like in her, what's incredible is that the human interaction is like incredible, right? It's just a voice that speaks to you. It's somebody on the phone. And a toaster also, like my daughter, who's 4 years old, can use a toaster, right? She puts a piece of toast in, she pushes a button. But we are traveling a curve where the degree of that design is becoming incredibly complex. Like the technology, it's getting better, but we need a lot of human-centered design to also create these tools. So we're in a moment where, despite the fact that this technology is proliferating, having some core design skills for how to fit this technology in people's lives is becoming more necessary and more urgent, more useful, and can also be a pretty critical differentiator for you if you are designing this technology. So like, there's certainly the open AIs who are working with the data sets and they're doing amazing work, but all of these smaller companies that are emerging, they can really have human-centered design as a differentiator. And if you want to learn some of that skill set, you can sign up for the Design Thinking Bootcamp, which we run 3 times a year. The March one just closed up, but we'll have one in early July and mid-September that you could come and join us over at the Stanford D School for about a week.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll close with the same thing. Like, I think these programs are incredibly transformative, and I think the biggest gift for us as a teaching team is when we hear back from our alums. We're still in touch with alums from 2012 and 2014. And when you know and see and witness how they're using the mindsets and the skills and the tools 12, 13, 14 years later still, and inspiring new generation of people who know how to kind of like look at the problems and solutions through the human lens, I think that's incredibly powerful. So I think regardless of any technology revolution that's coming on top of where we are right now, there will be a need to kind of like have that human connection and the sensitivity to have agency to actually propel the technology to work towards the projects that we're working on. So it will be delightful to have more people join us. We have had participants from all over the world, I think. Every single industry you can possibly imagine. We have a very long roster, and we'll be writing a little bit about it on LinkedIn as well and sharing some of the alum stories to inspire new generations to join us. And thanks for having us.
Perfect. I am sold. So Anja, Ariel, thank you both for joining us today. And again, give Stanford D School a good follow on LinkedIn. We will have some content to kind of, deliver on our LinkedIns as well as some short form bursts. If you caught a part or all of this, you just need a reminder. We'll be sure to give you the goods when it comes to being human and design thinking. So super thank you both for joining today.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Pleasure.
Good night. Pleasure.
So just because this is a double episode week, we're going to recap this one even more on our Friday episode. Recapping this, I'm going to do it in like 2 minutes here. The first recap I'm going to give you, Jess, is I am impressed at your ability to continue speaking while under the weather voice. A true, Jess, testament to radio skills as to how you find something in your voice even when you're less than 100%. So that was like a huge radio moment, in my opinion, for you this episode.
Oh, thanks, Auntie. And how do you solve the slow brain issue? Is this where you would be on your coffee kick to try to?
That makes it worse when I'm sick. That's not recommended. I'm not a medical expert. I will say if it is anything congestion related, like Mucinex, I'm a brand ambassador for Mucinex. I believe in the power of it. You don't want to do it for 2 weeks straight, but if you have a 48 hours, you can't get going, just max dose on Mucinex. Read what the description says. Don't go over it. Read what the description says. Max dose yourself on Mucinex, and you might get through 4 hours. But please stay in the office. Don't go bring it to everyone. That's my doctor's advice today. Or stay at home, not in the office.
Yes. We are on that. But yes, I really could have talked to Anja and Ariel for a very, very long time. I'm so grateful for them. I'm not trying to overhype this, but really that program is life changing. And I am so grateful that I get an opportunity to continue to go back. And I learn, even though I've been now practicing this and being an executive coach for 7 years, I learn something new every time. And it's such an inspiration.
And I see how much of you bring it to your day to day at LinkedIn. Also, this podcast, talk to the customer. I was like, there it is right there. So, your favorite topic.
And I wanted to tell them, I wanted to tell both of them, I'm like, okay, there's some hope because, from our side, especially in the B2B space, we're starting to see it change from
Yeah.
going product focused to people. And we're starting, it's absolutely shifting and better than it was like 5 years ago. But we still
I agree.
need to send some more leaders to the D school because
We
we
could
just
still
have
do
to
better.
yeah, we just have to watch the Super Bowl to really
No, it
see
could still be
that.
better.
Yeah, marketers are still playing it way too safe and they're not connecting with each
Yeah.
other and others and their customer the way they
In a
need to
personal
connect.
way.
Yeah.
I will leave us on that thought, Jess, because we're going to pick that up. It's a double week episode once again. We're going to continue this. And what does it mean in this age of authenticity? But Jess, thanks again for bringing on some of your partners. I always learn when we have excellent folks from the D School. I know I'm sold, and I'm sure our listeners are. But we'll be back again soon. I'll say till next time. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye.